As they travel across the land, your party will encounter all sorts of characters to interact with, from shopkeepers and bandits to mages and bar hands. But sometimes you might need to have an NPC tag along with the group in order to progress the story, or maybe your players even adopted a goblin into their group. Now what? In this video, I want to give you some tips for how to effectively run NPCs as a part of the party without stepping on any toes or overshadowing your players. Without further ado, let's get started. One of the main reasons that DMs will add NPCs to a party is to help round out the roles that are being used. Especially if you're running a module that's designed for a certain amount of players, plenty of DMs will give the party an NPC companion to help with healing, damage output, or spell support. Making up for a party's weaknesses can be fine, but be careful not to step on any of your players' toes when you're deciding who to send along with them. If your party's fighter wants to specialize in archery and you assign them a rogue who does even more damage per attack with their crossbow, then why is the fighter even needed? Or if your druid wants to use their herbalism kit to make potions that help the party's healing, maybe don't give them a cleric who's going to take all those gifts and make them obsolete. Every player wants to feel useful to the party, like they're an integral member of the team. Having NPCs that overlap with their skill sets will make them feel less unique and less needed. If you're worried that without an extra NPC to help them, your party's going to get steamrolled, you can always adjust the difficulty of a fight rather than handing them an extra character. Just because the module says there's 2 owlbears doesn't mean it can't be 1. But if adding an NPC is your best choice, you can always just make it a monk. Nobody plays them anyway. In a team game like D&D, it's important that everyone feels like they're on an even playing field. Sure, some classes might spike in power at different times, or get really strong abilities that briefly put them above others, but over the course of a campaign, the players should feel like each of their characters were about as strong as one another, and that everyone was given their moments to shine. Don't let your NPCs ruin this. Having an NPC that's stronger than your party members, especially if their power level is way higher, will make your players feel weak in comparison. It's not going to be any fun for the party if your NPC is mopping up all the enemies, trivializing combat, and making them feel like side characters in their companion's adventure. Having a powerful NPC help them out once or twice is one thing, but sticking them with the party is a recipe for disaster. A really easy trap to fall into is confusing challenge rating with player levels. For example, you might be tempted to have an archer, which has a CR of 3, tag along with your melee-focused party of level 3 players. But a challenge rating of 3 means that NPC should be a decent fight for a party of 4 level 3 players, way stronger than any individual. While I don't recommend using actual player levels for your NPCs, make sure any stat blocks you give them reflect the actual power level that you're looking for. Rather than toe the line between strong and too strong, I'd recommend just making any NPCs that travel with your party significantly weaker. Give them only 1 attack instead of 2, less HP, fewer abilities. In fact, this can be a really great way to let your players shine. Introducing a young squire who wants to learn from the party paladin, or a wizard who can study under the party spellcasters are good ways to make your players feel even more powerful in comparison. Sometimes you might hear people tell kids that they should only speak when spoken to, or that children are better seen and not heard. Now, I won't comment on the psychological effect that might have on them, but those are actually kind of great guidelines for running a party NPC. Having your NPC comment on events here and there, or throw out a joke every now and then is fine. But remember, it's your players who are the main characters of this story. This is especially true when interacting with your other NPCs. It's one thing to have the character approach one of your players, giving them a chance to roleplay or open up about their backstory. But having your NPC butt in every time the party meets someone new, having lengthy conversations where your players aren't really involved at all, is generally not a good idea. Your NPC doesn't have to always be silent, but rarely should they be the center of attention. Anytime you introduce an NPC to the party, you can never really be sure which ones will be a hit and who your players will spurn. That makes adding an NPC to the party really tricky. How do you know if they'll actually want them around or just be annoyed that they have to drag them along? No matter how well you know your players, the answer is you won't. So plan accordingly. Making your NPC companions optional or short-term is a great way to ensure that they don't overstay their welcome. That squire I mentioned earlier who wants to learn from the paladin, give your player the chance to say no if they don't want to take on that responsibility. Or maybe an NPC offers to guide them through the local swamp, but your party's druid knows find the path, though they're all good. If the players don't want them, try not to force the NPCs to go anyway. If you do really need or want an NPC to tag along, try to limit it to just a few sessions. If they really need that guide not to get lost, then only plan for them to be traveling through the swamp for a session or two. And if the Paladin Squire is going to be essential to that player's story, don't wait too long to give them the big reveal that they're actually the character's nephew. If they're not optional, they should probably be short term. The one big exception is that sometimes your party will fall in love with an NPC they meet. It might be expected, but honestly, it probably won't. The best long-term NPCs are the ones that your party chooses for themselves, not the ones that you choose for them. Every DM who's played for a while has had this moment. You set up a puzzle or a situation that you thought would be a quick little roadblock for the party, and an hour later, you're still there. They've hashed out a dozen different plans, pored over their character sheets, and yet are still missing the easy solutions right in front of them. But you know who probably sees that the door they're trying to get into is actually unlocked? Bob, the friendly kobold that they picked up 3 sessions ago. It can be really tempting to have your NPCs chime in and help out when your players are struggling to come up with solutions. And there's certainly a time and place for them to get involved. Your NPCs can help remind the players of things they've forgotten that their characters would know, or contribute ideas when prompted. But D&D is a game, one that you and the people at your table are playing, not your NPCs. Don't have your NPCs solve everything for the party, since this will rob them of what makes the game fun. Making choices, coming up with goofy plans, and then dealing with the consequences. It'll be especially detrimental if the NPC has no way of reasonably knowing how they should proceed. At that point, it'll just feel like the DM is telling them what to do. Give your players a chance to figure things out on their own before having your NPCs chime in. And when you do, make sure that you're still rolling for them and not just giving them knowledge that they wouldn't have. I know it's painful, but Bob can wait just a little while longer. Combat can be the most exciting part of D&D and the most tiresome. The more combatants that are in any given fight, the longer it's going to take. Even if your NPC has one measly attack to their name, that's still dice that need to be rolled and damage to be calculated. And nobody wants to sit there and wait through a long, lengthy turn from the NPC who's with them. When initiative gets rolled and combat starts, make sure to keep your NPC's turns as quick as possible. Limiting them to just a few actions they can use beyond the basic ones like dash and dodge will prevent you from getting overwhelmed with options in the moment. There's no reason that the sellsword your party hired needs to have a laundry list of battle master maneuvers and bonus actions that they can choose from. Save that for the party fighter. A simple melee attack and a ranged option is more than enough. Similarly, if the NPC is a spellcaster, do not load them up with a bunch of spells to choose from. 3 or 4 combat spells will be more than enough to keep them helpful without tempting you to thumb through dozens of different incantations to find the perfect one for that moment. And make sure that you write down things like their spell save DC and hit bonus before combat. You do not want to have to try and pull these out mid-battle. For better or worse, it's very hard to forget about your players during D&D. In most cases, whether around the table or via webcam, you'll be staring right at them. Your NPCs are a little different though. Since they don't have any actual physical presence at the table, it's easy to lose track of that extra character who's tagging along. It feels so deflating to describe how the party narrowly escapes the collapsing tomb, rolling dex saves and dodging obstacles. Just to remember at the end, oh yeah, Frank the Bard was there too? I guess I have to roll for him now? Every DM forgets about NPCs from time to time, especially ones who have been with the party for a while and can bleed into the background. If you find yourself struggling to remember who's with them, writing that NPC's name at the top of your notes, keeping a miniature of them next to your dice, or having a sticky note with a reminder on your DM screen are all ways to jog your memory in the moment. If the party has to get through a daring gauntlet or save against a mage's fireball, make sure you're rolling for that NPC as well. And if you do forget about them in the moment, you can always go back and have them roll to see if they're in peril, or you can just laugh, shake it off, and describe how somehow, against all odds, Grimly the Goblin was there the whole time too. Sometimes it's just funnier that way. Those are just a couple tips for helping you run party NPCs without them becoming too powerful or overbearing for your players. Having NPCs with your party can be a lot of fun when done right, and I hope that you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like or subscribing to the Bard's College. I make content about D&D and DMing, and I always really appreciate the support. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.